Pregame.com.
Welcome back to Pregame.tv. I'm your host, Marco D'Angelo, joined in studio, Ken Thomson, SportsX Radio, Bryan Leonard, Pregame Pro. Guys, it's the big dance. We're going to kind of just touch around some things, get you guys' general thoughts. You know, if there's any teams you think that, you know, are overrated, you know, we just finished up our videos. A couple teams, you know, I obviously said that, you know, Kentucky all of a sudden is getting a lot of love by people, but there's no team that's getting more love right now in the big dance than Michigan State. I mean,
Louisville.
Well, everybody's Louisville, but Louisville didn't get as high a seed as Michigan State got. Louisville's fourth.
The same.
Or they're both on four.
Which brings me to my point. I was going to ask you guys, would you rather have the 4 number 1s or the 4 number 4s? Because I'll take the 4 number 4s right now.
You know, if you're going to do it, and that's going to bring up an interesting thing that I want to bring up about, you know, if you're betting odds to win, you know, going in the futures, I think that's the worst bet in all of the tournament.
To win the tournament?
Yeah, to win the tournament.
Yeah, you just bet the same team over and over and let it.
Partly, because to do it, you have to win 6 games. Mm-hmm. And especially if you're getting a team that's going to be an underdog in any one of those, you get an underdog on a money line and you're parlaying it, rolling it over 6 times. You're going to supersede anything that they're giving you on the paper here.
And the best thing is, by doing it that way, you can pull out at any time you want. You get a matchup, you say, well, this isn't a very good matchup for him. If you bet him on the futures board, you're stuck with it. You can just take your winnings and go home.
I have 2 futures. Chuck and I have Florida 17.5 to 1. We bet that before Chris Walker got instated. I just thought that was a good spot. I think they were sitting number 8 or 9 in the country at the time. And then got San Diego State at 200 to 1. So, again, a team that's defensive-oriented. We jumped on that way before it came plummeting down. Again, there you can hedge back. You can't hedge back on Florida really until they get to the Final Four, maybe the Elite Eight, but you are going to be a favorite in every game, which is a good thing. We had Kansas State and Baylor a couple years ago at 200 and 100 to 1. They got to the Elite Eight. They both lost in the Elite Eight games. Really, you couldn't do much because you're dogs in a lot of your games.
Yeah, but when you've got your future on Florida, you're going to be great that you don't have to actually bet the other team on the money line. You can bet the team plus the points.
Exactly, and
win both ways if you get the tight game. So that's the best of both worlds for you. Let's talk Michigan State and Louisville. Michigan State, everybody's pointing out the fact that they were injured most of the year. They finally got everybody back. Not only they got everybody back, so they're playing well, but those people that were out have fresh legs. You know, I keep hearing that. Everybody's beating that to death. These are 20-year-old kids. They're all, you know, this is the tournament. Everybody's going to be fine. Nobody's going to lose because they're tired. Okay, it's set up. To me, the conference tournament is the week you got to worry about, you know, if a team's going to get fatigued. And Michigan State is one of those teams that went the distance, won the conference tournament. They were in the tournament either way, but they showed that they were the best team at the end of the season. They got to play their arch rival in the championship game, so that makes that win even sweeter. Does that take something out of a team moving forward? I know for years, you know, teams coming out of the Big East tournament, it was almost a detriment if you won the Big East tournament because it was such a physical grind to play because the teams were so good in the Big East, you know, and when you got to, you know, play 3 games in a row, 3 days, championship game like that, you were spent for that Thursday or Friday game. Now, if you got past that, it's a different story, but it took a lot out of you going forward. What do you guys think with Michigan State?
Michigan State is a different animal here. Number one, the depth on that team, they've got it. They found out how good Travis Trice was when you were missing a couple of your guards where, you know, Appling had the wrist injury, Harris was banged up. I mean, when you start getting chemistry back together, it's one thing to have those names back and you have the roster, but you've got to be able to play together and not just in practice. So it was very important for them not only to do well in the Big Ten tournament, but also to beat Michigan because Michigan had beaten them twice. So that's why that was one of my bigger plays was Michigan State against Michigan. And the line kept rising and the public was on it and the Sharps were on it. And it was an easy win. It really was. Michigan had no business even being as close as they were at the end. And Michigan State dominated that game. This team found out how good Valentine is. We knew Payne was good and he came back. They took a while and they gave these guys more time. Like Brandon Dawson, they let him stay. He was probably ready to go 4 games before he came back. But Izzo wanted to make sure. And chemistry-wise, they were playing well enough and the depth is so good on this team. That's why I think they are a dangerous team because they have that depth and because they have their second team's better than your second team. They're going to blow you away.
The injury ends up being
right.
look a couple of years ago in the NBA with the San Antonio Spurs and Popovich, because of some injuries and then because of the way he was resting players in games, backup players became, instead of just role players, became, they actually had their role increased, and it made the team deeper and better, so that whenever the first unit did go out and you brought that second unit in on the floor, you weren't having you weren't stepping back. And that's one of the things that you're going to see with Michigan State moving forward.
Yeah, Michigan State and Louisville, with these coaches, great coaches, you know what you're going to get all season long. We know Michigan State and Louisville, they're going to struggle a little bit early on, but the coaches will have them ready at the tournament. So a lot of people right now just assume that these are two of the teams to beat. And talent-wise, yes. Coaching-wise, yes. But as you pointed out, Michigan State, coming off that, the double revenge game against Michigan, going all the way to the championship. Louisville, the way they dominated, just blowing people away right now, I have to think, and especially with all the talking heads on TV about these two 4-seeded teams that should have been 1-seeded teams. There's going to be a lot of public money on these two teams, and I want nothing to do with them in this first round because I think they're going to be overvalued.
The difference between Louisville and Michigan State, to me, is the depth. Louisville does not have the depth. Down low, they got Montrezl Harrell, who's grown up. He's a beast. Russ Smith has been great, and he has stayed within himself. He's been somebody that has not turned the ball over, and he is solid. But he will miss Peyton Siva big time. Siva was the guy that really protected the ball. Smith, on occasion, can get out of control still, turn the ball over, and they don't have a lot of depth to bring in, especially down low in the paint. They miss guys like Gorgie Jang, who was big on the boards last year. And again, that's where I think Louisville will go down before Michigan State. I expect Michigan State to get in the Final Four.
Any thoughts from you on one of these two teams making the Final Four?
No, talent-wise, I could see it happening. But some teams have a tougher road than others, and Wichita State being probably the toughest of them all.
I like to see Wichita State take out Louisville, get a little revenge from the Final Four game, and they are good enough to do it against this Louisville team because they don't have to deal with Gorgie Jang down low.
Are you guys buying the conspiracy theory? Everybody's throwing out that they stacked the deck on Wichita State because it's like they were forced to give Wichita State a number 1 seed, and they really didn't want to, but how can you not when they haven't lost a game? And they were a team that made the Final Four the year before, so begrudgingly they gave them a number 1 seed, and just the track for them to get to the Final Four is the toughest we've probably ever seen.
It's a tough run, but to be honest with you, some of those teams that they're going up against are tough in name as opposed to tough in ability. Duke's not as good as they've been in the past. Kentucky's not as good as they've been in the past. Great names, great programs, but I'm not so sure that Wichita State can't knock off either one of them.
I thought Stephen F. Austin got screwed, too. In other words, throw two mid-major teams that are doing well, VCU and Stephen F. Austin, put them against each other, just like you do. You want to take out those mid-majors. You always have to have those power conferences. They've got to have some of their big boys down the stretch to make it good for TV, and they work it out that's the way the odds are going to stack up as you get to the Sweet 16.
Quickly, one of your teams that you said you had a future on, San Diego State. The Mountain West Conference got absolutely zero love this year, and there's no question, and I'll be the first to admit, the conference was much softer this year than it was last year. But the two teams at the top, San Diego State and New Mexico, I felt were very good basketball teams, and I think that they're a little bit underrated going into the big dance.
I was at that game. I had a great suite, and I was bet my butt on New Mexico. San Diego State came back, took a 1-point lead, and I swear had Thomas and Mack, the 9,000 New Mexico fans there. No offense, UNLV, because I love the Rebels. But those 9,000 fans were louder than any UNLV crowd I've ever heard. Those are great fans. They travel well. They'll be there. New Mexico's dynamite. And with Kirk and Bairstow down low, I think that team's dangerous. San Diego State, great defensive team. They need to shoot it well. Thames needs to play well. He's the senior point guard, but he can also knock it down. And they need to get Shrigley, the three-point assassin that nailed 4 threes on UNLV. If they can get him some open looks, and teams that don't know him may give him a little distance, that kid can knock it down from anywhere. New Mexico wouldn't give him any of those shots because they knew him so well. I think both those teams are dangerous. I have them both winning their first couple games, and I like this Lobos team a lot with Kirk and Bairstow down low, Kendall Williams, Hugh Greenwood. Hey, kudos, too, to Alford over at UCLA. We talked about him. But Craig Neal, what he's done there at New Mexico, hasn't missed a beat there. And I know some of those players were left there, but he infused it, got it together, and that team came on big, too.
And what I like about New Mexico, and to me, that's one of my underrated teams, is if you kick it down low to Bairstow and and you try to double down low, you're leaving. You got a great inside-outside because he can kick it back outside to Williams, and he can just
or Greenwood,
just nail you. And I just think this team is underrated, flying under the radar because of the conference they're in. Were either of you guys surprised that the Atlantic 10 put 6 teams in the tournament?
All right, here, based on last year, you said, Mountain West didn't get any love. They got love last year. They got 5 teams in, but they didn't do well in the tournament. So now the A10, they're getting what the Mountain West got last year, a shot to show how good the conference is. I think the A10 conference is better than the Mountain West conference was last year. And the Mountain West conference had their best season, but these A10 teams are dangerous. They're all different styles, but they can all go up and down the court. And if they shoot it well, any one of those teams, they can beat anybody in the country. I don't care if it's St. Joe's. I don't care who it is. And let's remember, Dayton, who goes against Ohio State, which is actually a free play that I put out on in the Review Journal. I like Dayton. I think Dayton can beat Ohio State. But that team got screwed against St. Joe's on a push-off by Langston Galloway, literally pushed the defender back 5 feet. That allowed him to make the 3 that knocked Dayton out, or Dayton may have won that A10 tournament. That's a darn good team in the Flyers.
I just want to touch on the Mountain West. Both those teams are very good teams. I'm not going to be backing them because the Mountain West has done terrible in these tournaments. You talked about they were a step above everybody else in the conference. Nobody else in the conference even got an invite to the NIT. Now,
you wouldn't back New Mexico against Stanford?
No, I'll probably be on the dog if I play that
Okay.
game. But it goes to the point, all the other teams, they look very good in the conference. All the other teams in the conference are bad. What's that make it look like when they go out here to play quality teams that they haven't faced all season long?
Well, both teams, especially San Diego State, they played a good out-of-conference schedule.
San Diego State, they won in Kansas.
Yeah. So, and Steve Fisher, he's getting old, but the guy still can coach.
Beat Creighton, too.
I think that I love your futures. You want to sell any of it?
No.
All right, guys, hope you enjoyed the little roundtable discussion for the big dance. Enjoy it, guys. One tip I'll give you, as we said in one of the videos, that watch these popular teams. If you're, looking to bet against one of the teams that's a big-name team, wait a little bit on your wager because, the public's going to be involved. The UCLAs, the Kentuckys, the Dukes, all those big-name schools, the Michigan States, the Louisvilles, they're going to get a ton of public money. Know when to bet. A lot of the times, getting the best number, and especially in the tournament, you're going to see so many of these games going to come down to, as Steve Fezzik likes to say, it's a coin flip at the end of the game where a bucket's going to decide it. Make sure you're on the right side of the line. Get the best number you can get. Shop around. And again,
last thing on the games for these weeks, don't just focus in on the big dance, March Madness. Marco will tell you, Brian will tell you, you can make a lot of money on where a home court advantage comes into play, or maybe it's an overrated home court advantage that we've seen in the CBI, CIT, and the NIT, and off to a good start. And I think we're all going to do well on those smaller tournaments. So a lot of times we make our better money on those tournaments, not the big dance.
Absolutely. They don't get all of the public action in there. The lines, you can find some better numbers. All right. He's Bryan Leonard. Ken Thomson, Marco D'Angelo will be back next week. Enjoy the games this week. Let the madness begin. We'll be back next week. Pregame.tv.